I'm David Heitler-Clevens.
And I'm Rodney Wittenberg. And this is Music for the New Revolution.
You will not be able... Wow! Good God, y'all! What is it good for? Absolutely! Now get said again!
Come, you masters of war.
War, war, rumors of war.
We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming. There wasn't as many as there was a while ago.
And it's 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Nothing to kill or die for.
Say it! War! Good God, now! What is it good for?
Yes, War and Peace.
Peace and War.
Yeah, it's been going on a long, long, long time, right?
Yes, it has. And you know what's interesting? It's like listening to that and also doing some of the research for some of the other shows we're going to do on this subject. This is sort of the reason why we have our show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about it, like almost all the whole protest song movement in the late 60s was all about the war. I guess the early 60s it would have been about the civil rights movement, but lately, you know, and I guess the other movements kind of piggybacked off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's not as many women's rights songs, are there? For the 60s?
Oh, yeah, there's quite a few. Yeah, lots of women's rights songs. But, you know, I think the other thing that is important to remember is that, you know, there's been music related to war for as long as there have been wars, not always anti-war. I mean, music's been used to stir up the troops to battle as well. I mean, marches are martial music, literally.
Yes.
And you know, I was just teaching about this the other day and played the Ballad of the Green Berets from in the midst of the anti-war movement.
Yeah.
And that was a huge hit for Sergeant Barry Sandler, you know, and it kind of gave the, you know, people who were supporting the Vietnam War some kind of cause to, you know, point at this idea of the silent majority that really were in support of it. That fact that song became such a big hit and was a very, you know, rah, you know, troops kind of thing.
Well, I think even back then, I think people get supporting the troops or supporting the people who are fighting versus supporting the cause or the reason they're fighting. I think they conflated those two back then. I think there were people who supported the troops but weren't happy about why we were fighting that war.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. Although there was more of a blaming the troops themselves. I mean, some of the things that people were very angry at the anti-war movement for, you know, treating the returning soldiers as the enemy. You know, and I think that was wrong. But I also think we went a little too far in the opposite direction of, you know, when we got into this whole support the troops thing in the first Gulf War, and it made it so that even the anti-war movement was really nervous about sort of holding individual soldiers responsible for their actions. And, you know, to me, there's got to be some kind of middle ground between those two positions, because sometimes soldiers do horrible things, massacres, you know, Abu Ghraib and things like that, and then they really do need to be held responsible, I think, for their actions. It can't all be about, I was just following orders. Right. You know, look where that leads us.
Yeah, I mean, it's the birth of our country, the Boston Massacre. So if you're wondering why we're talking about war, this is our Memorial Day show. And we decided to take a look at some contemporary, as we always do, contemporary songs about war and peace. And we also, since we found so many songs, we will be doing other shows about the same subject. And we have a wonderful interview coming up from John McCutcheon.
So this would be episode 1 of this theme, as we often do, but this is a big one. So we'll have probably many episodes. Not as many as there have been wars, though, probably.
No.
Yeah. But by more contemporary, you know, we often define that as being from the 80s to the present, and the 80s are pretty well represented in some of the selections that we'll do today. You know, actually, just personally, the 80s is really when I started to become more involved as an anti-war activist, both musically and in terms of, protesting and stuff. So I guess that might be partly why a number of the songs that I associate are particularly from that era.
Yeah. I remember walking by the park and seeing the hippies playing their guitars and singing protest songs when I was like 7, like still living in West Philly, and walking, with my parents and seeing and going, oh, I want to go over there. And my parents said, no, we're not going over there. Those are those hippies. But yeah, I was aware of it back then. And I don't know, it's weird for me coming from a military family, which you probably didn't know, but I'd say that because my grandfather served and my sister also serves, and my dad's 2 uncles served, or my dad's 2 brothers, sorry, my uncles. And in each case, it's a very, very, very different experience of service. I mean, my grandfather would talk to me about loving his time in the military. He was stationed in New York during World War II. And before that, and it gave him, taught him a skill, gave him a career. He ended up being a maintenance or boiler maintenance guy at Whitman's Chocolates, but he learned all that from serving in the Navy. But my dad's 2 brothers, completely different story, came back from Korea and just completely messed up on drugs and just a mess. So it's a weird thing for me of being of 2 minds, about like what the military can actually do and what it does for a lot of working class poor and people of color, and how it is a way of being upwardly mobile, and sometimes it's people's last opportunity to really make a change. And I had the opportunity last year to do a project with a number of vets and really get to know them, and it was really interesting to see where they fall on the political spectrum too. Like some are very conservative and some are radically left, and but they all have a deep love of this country and wanted to be of service. So that's what we honor on Memorial Day, even as we are playing anti-war songs.
Yes, that is right. And, I also, both my grandfathers were in the military during World War II, and I don't think either of them were in combat, but they were. It was an interesting time, because even people who had been long-time anti-war activists in the musical world, like Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger, signed up during World War II, and they sang songs, Round Round Hitler's Grave and things like that, and the Sinking of the Reuben James, and so there was a real different attitude about that war among a lot of people who had been peaceniks and who were again, for Korea and Vietnam, etc. So yeah, it is an interesting thing, and your points about. I think a lot of times, ever since we had the draft in Vietnam, a lot of people have pointed out that we've had a de facto economic draft because the people who are fighting the wars are people who often don't have other choices. They're kind of forced into it by economic reasons, or that's the only way to get a college education paid for, or things like that. So it's been a way that it's been disproportionately affecting, and even when there was a draft, of course, that was true. People were able to get out of it, including a number of people who we've had as presidents, who are often the most warmongering presidents, are the ones who were the chicken hawks, right? Anyway, that's
we haven't had a president that served since George Bush Sr. It's that he's the last. I mean, he served in World War II, but none of the other. President Clinton and Obama and Bush Jr. and, of course, the person who we won't talk about, but
he who shall not be named at the moment.
They all did not serve.
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting because often there are a lot of Democrats who think somehow it's a winning strategy to have somebody who did serve be a candidate. That doesn't seem to work so well because it doesn't, like Kerry and et cetera, it never wins over conservatives. They even for all their flag waving and military supporting supposedly, they'll always go with a chicken hawk who's a Republican over a decorated veteran who's a Democrat. So it just doesn't seem to work, but it sort of seems to be like a moderate Democrat's wet dream always is like, oh, we're going to get a military person in.
I think it's a misconception or misunderstanding of what people are responding to. I think that, someone's a lefty and a military person. They are probably, I'm going to stereotype here probably, but they probably understand the cost of war and and know what it's like to be on the battlefield and know what they're asking people to walk into, and don't necessarily see it as this is not going to come out right. I was going to say don't see it as heroic, but it's not that it's not heroic. It's they're real about it.
Right. I think some of the most anti-war people actually have been people who have seen battle because they know what it really means,
Right.
And as opposed to, I always think some of the most powerful anti-war messages are often about seeing the people who are making the decisions about the troops as just like moving players around on a chessboard, and they're not really thinking of the human costs and what this really means on the ground because they don't have to pay those costs.
Right.
And so, the idea, like as much as I can't stand Mel Gibson these days, that movie Gallipoli, I think was a very powerful representation of that, where it goes back and forth between the people making the decisions and the people on the ground who are dying because of those decisions. And I just thought that it came across very, very powerfully. And actually, that's a perfect way of getting into this first song that we have, which is an early song from Suzanne Vega, one of those songs from the 80s. And it's not a historical song, but I think it's a really, really powerful song that has all this depth of stuff about class and age and even a sort of a little bit of a sense of attraction between the two characters, the queen and the soldier. But it definitely has this idea of, here's this queen who isn't really recognizing what her decisions mean for regular people until she's confronted with the soldier. And then we're going to go right from that song into some of our interview with John McCutcheon that you mentioned, and where he's talking about his great song Christmas in the Trenches, about the Christmas truce during World War I.
Awesome.
Upon the Queen's door, he said, I am not fighting for you anymore. And the Queen knew she'd seen his face someplace before, and slowly she led him inside. He said, I've watched your palace up here on the hill, and I've wondered who's the woman for whom we all kill. But I am leaving tomorrow, do what you will. Only first I am asking you why. Down the long narrow hall he was led, into her room with her tapestries red, and she never once took the crown from her head. She asked him there to sit down. He said, I see you now, and you are so very young, but I've seen more battles lost than I have battles won, and I've got this intuition, says it's all for your fun. And now will you tell me why? Well, the young queen, she fixed him with an arrogant eye. She said, you won't understand, and you may as well not try. But her face was a child's, and he thought she would cry, but she closed herself up like a fan. And she said, I've swallowed a secret burning thread. It cuts me inside, and often I've bled. And he laid his hand then on the top of her head, and he bowed her down to the ground. Tell me, how hungry are you? How weak you must feel as you are living here alone and you are never revealed. But I won't march again on your battlefield. And he took her to the window to see. And the sun, it was gold, though the sky, it was gray. And she wanted more than she ever could say. But she knew how it frightened her, and she turned away and would not look at his face again. And he said, I want to live as an honest man, to get all I deserve and to give all I can, and to love a young woman who I don't understand. Your Highness, your ways are very strange. But the crown, it had fallen, and she thought she would break. And she stood there, ashamed of the way her heart ached. And she took him to the doorstep, and she asked him to wait. She would only be a moment inside. And out in the distance her order was heard, and the soldier was killed, still waiting for her word. And while the queen went on strangling in the solitude she preferred, the battle continued on.
You put meat on the skeletal bones of history. And that was, little by little, I learned how to write songs and mostly tell stories and figure out how to make these things come alive for folks.
It's interesting how that's come up in so many of the interviews that we've done recently, with that the idea of telling stories is really primary to many of the artists that we've interviewed, and telling people's stories, not necessarily the famous, but the unsung heroes, the regular people. And I think that's something that you are, particularly adept at and particularly well known for, and have done such an amazing, body of work of telling those stories.
Well, I kind of feel like I'm doing a rescue operation on a good story often, whether it be, the 1914 Christmas truce, which is taught in history classes in the UK, but when I wrote the song back in 1984 was almost completely unknown over here. These are stories that may make it into some news feed. You might read it someplace, and then you'll never hear of it again. But with a song, you can sing it every night, and the innate truths are talked about again.
Well, and you must seek these kinds of stories out, but I know that because you've become known for trying to tell those stories, you are probably approached with them. In fact, I've heard you tell about the genesis of Christmas in the Trenches, which you just alluded to, and how that came about. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
It was in the spring of 1984, and my record company, Rounder Records, had asked me to do a Christmas Hammer Dulcimer album. And I suspect that they expected Hark the Herald Angels Sing on the hammer dulcimer. And I wasn't interested in doing anything at all like that. And so I had gone and gotten music from all over the world. And I was really pleased with what we were going to do. And I was about 2 weeks from going to the studio, and I felt like there was something missing. I was doing a concert at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And prior to the concert, post sound light checks, that 45-minute to an hour period when you're in limbo before the show starts, I was sitting in a backstage dressing room reading a book, as is my habit in backstage dressing rooms. And all of a sudden the door explodes open, and in literally swept this old black woman wearing pushing the broom. And I could tell immediately she was a custodial engineer in the place. And we just started chatting. She was, she didn't expect me to be in there. I didn't expect her to be in there, but we, she was friendly. I like people, and we just started talking, and eventually we started telling jokes. And I lost track of time. It was that engaging a conversation. And eventually I got the, 2 minutes, and I said, okay, I got to go to work now. And so, your turn, give me your best shot. And she told me the story of the Christmas truce of 1914. She prefaced it by saying, my favorite, it ain't no joke. Hadn't got a punchline, and it's true. And I had heard the story of the truce before, but I think it was in this unexpected moment of coming from at a time and from a source I really didn't expect it. And I was in this place where I'm missing something for this album. And as soon as I heard it, I thought, oh my gosh, that needs a song. And as my wife once said, it was one of those moments where I would tell her a story. She'd say, oh my goodness, this sounds just like a John McCutcheon song. And who better to write it? And it was one of those songs that is a gift. I mean, every writer who's listening to this will know what I'm talking about. There are some songs you write and others you just simply write down. I've often told my songwriting students that paying attention also means paying attention to that moment when, no, you're not going to put it off. No, you have to do it right now. The muse is fickle and she's infrequent. And I've often had this image of God going around for years and years, whispering into people's ears, dun, 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 dun. And finally somebody listened. I wrote it during the intermission of the concert that night. I did a really short first set because I was really bugged by this story, and little couplets would come into my mind, and I went back and I'm preparing all my papers for the Center for Southern Folklore at Chapel Hill, and I was going through my original lyrics, and I found the original lyrics of Christmas in the Trenches, and I was very surprised at how little editing happened. Those stories, sometimes those stories just come to you. And you're right, David, there are people who come up to me saying, oh, you know what you ought to write a song about? And every songwriter gets that, and most songwriters hate it. Me, it's like, people are doing my work for me. Writing the song after all this time, it's work. I don't want to dismiss it, but it's often the most difficult part is, first of all, getting the story. What is that story? And secondly, finding the voice. What voice do you want to use? And in this case, it was, my name is Francis Tolliver.
Now, is that a real person?
No, I totally you know, it's interesting. Many years later, I met a fellow by the name of Frank Buckles, who was the last surviving World War I veteran. I met him when he was 107. He died at 110. And I sang him the song, and he said, "Did you do any research on that song?" I said, "No." It was a little hard to do research during the first set of a concert. You know, I was compelled to write the story. I made up the guy's name, where he was from. I mean, everything that happened truly happened. But no, I just needed a voice. I've often found that a first-person voice is very compelling. I learned that from Woody Guthrie. You know, take a trip with me to 1913. You know, I'll take you through a door and up a tall stair. And man, you are. Everybody who hears that line, visualize it's a movie. They're in the middle of it, and then you're gone. You're gone. You know, you're in the story. And I guess, you know, I've spent my adulthood sort of unpacking a lot of the inspiration I got from people like Woody, and say, oh, I guess I learned to do that from a steady diet of Woody Guthrie songs when I was 14.
Yeah. So did the veteran of World War I that you talked to, when he asked you if you'd done any research, what was his next comment? I was sort of curious.
You know, there wasn't any gas in 1914. I said, you know, duly noted. You going to change the song?
Not at this point.
The most interesting thing he said to me, he said, the biggest thing you get wrong in that song, McCutcheon, is that you make it sound like it only happened once.
Uh-huh.
And that's the interesting thing, having met with people, especially Stanley Weintraub, who did the most exhaustive historical writing on this event, was, I think you have this notion, and in the children's picture book I wrote, the illustrator has, you know, like 24 people out in the field. The trenches were nearly 500 miles long. And according to Weintraub, there were probably about 300,000 men who took part in that. An interesting little historical sideline is that one of the German companies that refused to participate was led by a young Lieutenant Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been interesting, you know, songs a lot of times are catalysts. I mean, you write them, you turn them loose like a child. Go out and do your work in the world. I have no idea what's going to happen, and the result is people coming up to me with their grandfather's diaries. Or somebody sent me a copy of the London Daily Mail from New Year's Day, 1915, which had the first newspaper account. This furniture refinisher found it lining the drawer and said, oh, I know who needs this. Two people who said, I was in Vietnam and I was separated from my company, and I ran into a VC regular out in the jungle, and we pointed our guns at one another and realized, well, this doesn't make any sense. Have you got any chocolate? Got any cigarettes? And it's the bottom line is, it's the breaking down of the anonymity that makes war possible. And, you know, just trying to get inside of the guy's head. How would you feel if you'd been through that? How would you look at the person across no man's land?
Yeah. Well, and the way that you end it with that part about the walls have crumbled and and were never more, and then the very last bit about the on each end of the rifle were the same. Those are such powerful ways to bring that all home, that point.
Well, you could, you know, that's what the great thing about a story, you know, you could write some pedantic thing saying, you know, war is, you know, depends upon anonymity, and it's, you know, it's the poor people fighting the rich man's war, and blah, blah, blah. And people have done that. Or you can say, my name is Francis Tolliver. Let me tell you my story. And you make your own judgments. And that kind of license, that kind of generosity is an invitation to find yourself making choices that might surprise you. And that's the interesting thing about political music, I think. That in a lot of ways, having come up in the church, I realized that church music and political music are really similar. You've got two lines. One is in religious music, one is praise, and the other is proselytizing. Political music, you've got what's almost disparagingly called preaching to the choir. I prefer to think of it as a USO show for the troops. Nobody disparages those. And the other one is actual political work where you are trying to convince someone, you're trying to persuade someone. And, stories are very disarming.
Yeah. So you mentioned that a lot of people in Europe in particular know the story, but before your song, people didn't know it as well here. I'm curious whether there's a couple things I know of that, use this story in various ways. And I wonder if either of them had found it independent of you, or if you knew if any of them had actually found it through your song. One is the video that Paul McCartney did for the song Pipes of Peace. The song doesn't tell the story, but I don't know if you've ever seen the video that he made. And then, it'd be kind of cool if Paul McCartney had gotten the idea from you. And the other is the opera Silent Night.
I was going to mention the opera, yeah.
Or he might have gotten it from his history classes in school.
Yeah.
Right.
More likely,
yeah.
And then there's the film Julie Noel.
Yeah, the film, yeah.
Which is a really kind of different take on the story. I actually did a presentation with the producer and the director of that film at the United Nations Film Festival a number of years ago. And it was great to meet them, and I hadn't seen the film prior to knowing that I was going to be doing this thing with them, so I figured I ought to watch it. But the most powerful part of that movie is the very beginning of the film, where they have all these children from different countries talking about the people in other countries, and how from a very early age that kind of depersonalization and caricaturization starts. And that whole notion of we aren't born to hatred, to quote Nelson Mandela, we have to be taught.
Yeah.
And we can also unteach that too. So it's one of the things that, I think music can do so powerfully.
Right.
My name is Francis Tolliver. I come from Liverpool. 2 years ago, the war was waiting for me after school. To Belgium and to Flanders, to Germany to here, I fought for king and country I love dear. 'Twas Christmas in the trenches where the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were still, no Christmas song was sung. Our families back in England were toasting us that day. They're brave and glorious lads so far away. I was lying with my messmate on the cold and rocky ground, when across the lines of battle came a most peculiar sound. Says I, now listen up me boys, each soldier strained to hear, as one young German voice sang out so clear. He's singing bloody well, my partner says to me. Soon one by one each German voice joined in harmony. The cannons rested silent, and the gas clouds rolled no more, as Christmas brought us respite from the war. As soon as they were finished and the reverent pause was spent, God rest ye merry gentlemen, struck up some lads from Kent. Oh, the next they sang was Stille Nacht, 'tis silent night, says I. And in two tongues one song filled up that sky. There's someone coming towards us, the frontline sentry cried. All sights were fixed on one lone figure trudging from their side. His truce flag like a Christmas star shone on that plain so bright, as he bravely strode unarmed into the night. Then one by one on either side walked into no man's land. With neither gun nor bayonet, we met there hand to hand. We shared some secret brandy and wished each other well. And in a flare-lit soccer game, we gave him hell. We traded chocolates, cigarettes, and photographs from home. These sons and fathers far away from families of their own. Young Sanders played his squeeze box and they had a violin. This curious and unlikely band of men. Soon daylight stole upon us, and France was France once more. With sad farewells we each began to settle back to war. But the question haunted every heart that lived that wondrous night: whose family have I fixed within my sights? 'Twas Christmas in the trenches, where the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were warmed as songs of peace were sung. For the walls they'd kept between us to exact the work of war had been crumbled and were gone forevermore. Oh, my name is Francis Tolliver. In Liverpool I dwell. Each Christmas come since World War I, I've learned its lessons well. But the ones who call the shots won't be among the dead and lame. And on each end of the rifle, we're the same.
A classic.
Yes. A classic story.
Yeah.
And a testament to the power of music.
Yep. And the power of storytelling, too, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I think that's my favorite Christmas song, says the secular Jew.
In June, almost June.
Yeah, it has been for a very long time. I remember when I first tried to learn that song, it was one of the songs that I couldn't get through without just dissolving into tears. And it took me a number of times trying before I could finally get myself to get through it without, breaking down. But it's powerful. And it was we're fortunate, I think, to get John McCutcheon to do that interview with us just recently. Yes. And he's just a wonderful human being and musician. And
yep. And we have a little bit more of it coming up in a little bit.
That's right. We'll hear some more from him. So,
yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of really powerful stuff that's come up, around this issue musically. I mean, so many people have been moved to write wonderful songs. And, you were mentioning to me, Rodney, before we did this, that there's so many great anti-war songs from the 60s, obviously a lot of them connected to the Vietnam War. There's also some great ones from the 60s that are related to the Cold War and the arms race and things like that as well. But yeah, and I think we will at some point maybe go outside of our usual time period and do a special about 60s anti-war music, just because it's so much, and there's a lot that people don't know as well, the Fugs and things like that, so it would be fun to do that.
And birth of punk rock. I mean, you were talking earlier how it was the 80s. It really was me. It was the late to mid to late 70s when I discovered punk, and that's when I really saw that there could be politics in music and particularly anti-war sentiment in music.
Yeah. And a lot of those folks continued doing good anti-war stuff in the 80s too. So, yeah. Well, actually, the next song we were going to do is something that comes from the 60s. And the reason I thought we could weasel our way with it into this particular episode is because it's a recording from the 90s from the sisters' act Disappear Fear. Sonia of Disappear Fear still is going strong, but her sister decided to leave the music business, I guess. But they do this incredible version of Phil Ochs' song, Is There Anybody Here? And this is one of those songs I think because of what we were talking about this changing sensibility about the troops, supporting the troops versus being pro or anti-war. This is one of those songs I don't think could be written today. It's a much more directed at the soldiers kind of a song, similar to the Buffy Sainte-Marie Universal Soldier, which says, you really are to blame. I don't think people, even the most anti-war writers today, are writing that sort of a thing.
No.
But it may not be popular now, but I still think that there is, like I was saying before, a sense that we do need to think of ourselves as being responsible for our actions, even if we're, within that military umbrella.
We hope. I mean, that is the thing that we like to think about our military, both, that they are principled. And we think of we'd like to think that the enemy is not principled and we are.
But that's one of the ways that wars are perpetuated, right? Is by having that division and thinking our side is just and their side are evil. And But as John McCutcheon said so wisely, on each end of the rifle, we're the same. Yes. All right. Well, how about if we get to some more music then?
Yes.
And I hope you'll enjoy this amazing version by Disappear Fear of Phil Ochs' song, Is There Anybody Here? And after that, we'll hear New Order's tragic song with a reveal at the end. Listen carefully to Love Vigilantes.
others takes away the blame. Is there anybody here who wouldn't mind a murder by another name? Is there anybody here whose pride is on the line with the honor of the brave and the courage of the blind? I wanna see him, I wanna wish him luck, I wanna shake his hand, wanna call his name, put a medal on the man.
family, my wife and child waiting for me. I've got to go home. I've been so alone, you see. I want to see my family, my wife and child waiting for me. I've got to go home. I've been so alone, you see. I want to see my family, my wife and child waiting for me. I've got to go home. I've been so alone, you see.
All right.
Yes, New Order and love Vigilantes. I love that song.
Yeah. It's a very cool song. And I wonder, it to me, it's one of those things, it's almost like the Sixth Sense or something, where, I would hate to know what was going to happen at the end of that song before the first time I heard it, because it's more powerful to be surprised.
Yeah.
No spoilers.
Well, it was funny. I remember one of the first times I heard the song. It was at a club, and you're just dancing to it, so you don't realize what it's about, because it's so kind of, it's got that dreamy, hypnotic '80s kind of dance thing to it too.
Right.
And so it was actually probably a year later I realized, oh wait, right, New Order writes songs that have meaning. They're not just to dance to. Oh, okay. Right. Because back then it was the only place I would hear it was at a club in Philly called the East Side Club. Mm-hmm. So what were we going to say?
Yeah, I just was thinking about how many of these songs. There's a moment in a number of them where I get like this chill, on the back of my neck. The in the Disappear Fear version of that Phil Ochs song, when they go a cappella in the middle of it on the bridge, I think, and then it's when the electric guitar just starts sneaking in underneath them and builds to that, the band coming back in. It always gets me. I mean, I've heard that so many times, but every time it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
And that's the musical, the production and the arrangement especially that does that. Yeah. But and in Love Vigilantes, it's when you realize that he's actually dead and he doesn't know it. And in the Queen and the Soldier and in Christmas, all these songs have moments for me that just really ooh.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because we've looked at kind of 4 different types of music, even though it's the Phil Ochs song is a folk song. In the way that it's presented, it's not. And
right. That's not a folky arrangement.
Yeah, it's not a folky arrangement. Yet all of these are really great examples of story songs. I mean, and really make their point as by telling a story in the folk tradition. I mean, all of these songs could be just played by someone on an acoustic guitar and in a folk setting, and they would work as protest songs. I was thinking while we were listening, it's interesting that we're playing a lot of protest songs on Memorial Day, which may seem odd to some people that are listening. I don't know if it'll seem odd to everyone, but I think that, again, as we were talking about earlier, anyone who has been through war or seen it up close will, I think, understand why we're honoring them in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, and I think that we do tend to provide a, alternative kind of view on certain events. So we're likely to, for a holiday like this or July 4th or something, we're going to come at it at a little different angle than the mainstream way. Yeah, well, so you mentioned that, in a way, a number of the things that we've done have been have had some continuity, and I think it'll be fun. The next couple songs that we're going to do are going to be from different musical traditions and also, in a different songwriting sense too. So, and it's come up a little bit in passing, this idea that, so far a lot of the songs we've done are also about hot wars of actual people fighting battles against each other, armies against armies. And one of the things that's been this overshadowing mushroom cloud, you might even say, over our lives for a number of years, all of our lives, Rodney and mine, is this, threat of nuclear war. And I know, when I was a teenager and a young adult, I seriously was, daily afraid of, I thought Reagan was going to bring about the end of the world, through a nuclear war. And I think there was good reason to be afraid of that, when he was joking around about we begin bombing in 5 minutes and just, ramping up tensions between us and the Soviet bloc and proxy wars in Central America and Africa and all over. Anyway, I and I was young, but still I was seriously afraid. And so there were a lot of songs that were very powerful to me that talked about the threat of nuclear war. And these next couple, one is from the great son Ra and His Arkestra, a song I got to hear them do in a church in Ann Arbor, Michigan in the 80s called Nuclear War. And then I think my favorite name of a blues band is Big Daddy Kinsey and the Kinsey Report. And they, blues is not known for like super political stuff. I mean, there's J.B. Lenoir, who had that great Eisenhower blues in the 50s, but it's not the most political of genres. But
I think blues. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you could say
I'm always arbitrary. You say something, I always find I go. But go ahead.
No, I think there's definitely exceptions, but I'm just saying overall, like the majority of, I mean, unless you're saying like the fact that blues are often about a complaint, that could be seen as political. But if the complaint is, my woman left me, I'm not sure that's particularly political.
No, but I think I do think that blues is political with a small p. I think the making of it, how it's made, the people who make it, and I'm talking about going back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, early 60s.
Okay, that's a very good point. I will take that.
I think that the making of a blues song back then would have been a political act. And then of course, there's the whole Lead Belly thing, which is just, right. I think anybody who decides to write a song telling the story about the human condition, it can't help but be political. If you're going to be honest and tell a true story about the human condition, what people are going through in a certain situation or time, it's like Shakespeare. It's going to be political in some way.
Okay, but, I think you're right about that. So I guess what I should say to be more clear, and maybe this will work, but is blues lyrics are not usually overtly political in a direct like anti-war or pro-labor kind of a sort of thing. But Big Daddy Kinsey is an exception. He had, at least on this album in the 80s, a couple songs on there, the Bad Situation song, and this one, the Nuclear War Blues. But we'll hear Sun Ra first, and then Big Daddy Kinsey and the Kinsey Report.
work so hard just to survive every day. Oh, yeah, I have to work so hard just to survive every day. Yeah, just to turn on my TV. To hear a nuclear war is headed my way. Now listen. My father fought World War I, and I fought World War II. My son is over in Lebanon. What is the kid gonna do? I don't wanna see. I don't wanna see a nuclear war. Somebody tell me what in the hell? What in the hell we fighting for? I don't know. Myself, for they blow this world away. Now listen, people, let's go out and have a ball. It might worthwhile smoking, baby. Walk on out of here with our heads high. Hope for the best.
That was the Nuclear War Blues, Big Daddy Kinsey and the Kinsey Report. And before that, Sun Ra.
Yeah, Sun Ra with Nuclear War Live.
Yeah. It took me a while to find that. After I remembered it, it was, I think, the most memorable part of a very memorable concert that I saw, where people were running up and down the aisles, you know, very church meets LSD.
Yeah,
like, you know.
it's only a guy from Philadelphia could take big band era kind of entertainment and then make it, I don't know, flip it on its, turn it around and turn it into like a wild acid trip. But then, then also, I mean, the beginning of Afrofuturism. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying he's from Philadelphia, not Saturn?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a part of Philly that is Saturn. It's a porthole somewhere. I think it's in West Philly near Clark Park or something.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That has the ring of truth to it.
Yes. I think it's another porthole in Germantown somewhere. I don't know where that one is. And for all of you people who aren't from Philly, when you come here, you will have to see these places I'm talking about to know.
So yeah, interesting takes, and you know, we like to be eclectic on this podcast, so it's fun to have things from many traditions and different approaches to topics too. So yeah.
And it's interesting too how you know, again, at each one of these songs, from a songwriting standpoint, just takes a different sort of point of view and a different way of looking at the same subject, which is I think that allows the hopefully we're presenting a wide view of the subject, like a different, as we look to the people who serve, there's lots of different ways of thinking about those people today on Memorial Day as they're listening to these protest songs.
Right. Well, in the segment of the John McCutcheon interview that we played, there was a little bit touching on this idea of looking through the lens of class and thinking about, and there's an old Phil Ochs song also that had that chorus. Actually, originally it's always the old who send us to war, always the young who die. But later he changed it to it's always the rich who send us into war, always the poor who die. Maybe as he got older, and that was, resonating with me with some of the things that John McCutcheon was saying. And this next song by Steve Earle, Rich Man's War, really is exploring that particular idea. And this is another one of those songs that does a great twist at the end. Actually, the next couple songs, because we're going to go from that into a little bit more of John McCutcheon's interview, talking about his song Not in My Name. And both of these songs are post 9/11 songs, and they both have a little shift in the for the last verse of perspective. That's, I think, what partly makes each of these songs particularly powerful. So
let's take a listen.
Yeah.
Jim and John Army, 'cause he had no place to go. 'Cause ain't nobody hiring him since all the jobs went down to Mexico. I reckon that learning self-trade made me see the world. Moved to the city someday, married a black-haired girl. Somebody somewhere had another plan. Now he's got a rifle in his hand, rolling in a Baghdad, wondering how he got this far. Just another poor boy off to fight a rich man's war. Bobby had an eagle and a flag tattooed on his arm. Red, white, and blue to the bone when he landed in Kandahar. I left behind a pretty young wife and a baby girl. A stack of overdue bills and went off to save the world. It's been a year now and he's still there, chasing ghosts in thin dry air. Meanwhile back at home the finance company took his car. Just another poor boy off to fight a rich man's war. When will we ever see? Stand up and take our turn and tell ourselves we're free. Ali was the second son of a second son. Grew up in Gaza throwing bottles and rocks when the tanks had come. Ain't nothing else to do around here, it's just a game children play. Something about living in fear all your life makes your heart that way. He answered when he got the call, wrapped himself in death and he praised Allah. A fat man in a new Mercedes drove him to the door. He's just another poor boy off to fight a rich
So I wanted to ask you, John, about another song related to issues of war and peace that you wrote that I think is wonderful, which is "Not in My Name."
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you could speak
really
a little
like
to that one. Yeah.
That was the byproduct of a songwriting workshop I was doing in North Carolina. And it was just before September 11th. One of the things I was talking to the workshop participants was about the power of a repeated line. It's something that rock and roll does, but a lot of traditional music does as well. And my best buddy of many, many years, Cy Khan, does that a lot in his songs. You know, I'm going to go to work on Monday one more time. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to work on Monday, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, I'm going to give you a line and I want you to go off and write a song. And this is the chorus. And I did this 2 or 3 times, and one of them was Not in My Name. And I had people pair up, and my usual pattern is to send them off and give them 5 minutes to sort of get used to one another. And I'll go check in. And everybody I went to said, no, get away. We're fine. And I'd given them an hour, which is a ridiculous amount of time, you know. And so I was sitting by myself, and I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I ought to do my own lesson. And I wrote the 2 first verses, and I didn't know where to go with the third, and then September 11th happened, and it was primed for rewriting the song and adding the third verse. And to me, what I wanted to do was surprise people with the third verse. And I've done this at bluegrass festivals. Because I play for everybody, you know. To some people, I'm the hammer dulcimer guy. To other guys, I raise my kids on your albums. Mm-hmm. And to others, you know, we sing No Mas No More at the America Watch stuff. Mm-hmm. So people from many walks of life and experiences are coming together at my shows. And so I decided to do this. And it was the third verse that really got the bluegrass crowd on their feet. Just
in a positive way.
Yeah, in a positive way.
Good.
Yes. And I was, you know, it was just like, these people know me. I've played here every year for years and years. They know me. I'm going to take a risk and do this song because I think it could resonate with them. And the whole notion of using God as, you know, as an excuse for war. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the jury is still out whether organized religion is a good thing or a bad thing. It's been used and misused in so many ways that, and especially post 9/11, people realize, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very powerful, that shift, that when you realize that the perspective has shifted and the third verse, you know, it feels like it's from the perspective of, you know, God, that is a very effective, powerful device, and, you know, reinterprets the "Not in My Name" phrase. So, yeah.
Well, that was the thing I was telling them in this, is that inform the chorus and change the meaning of the chorus with every verse. And that was just part of the exercise, and this happened to come out.
That's pretty awesome.
See the plane in the distance, see the flame in the sky, see the young ones running for cover, the old ones wondering why. They tell us that the world is a dangerous place, we live in a terrible time, but in Hiroshima, New York, or in Baghdad, it's the innocent who die for the crime. Not in my name, not in my name, not in my name, watch through the window, their hearts locked in horror and pain, at the man lying strapped to a gurney as the poison is pumped through his veins. And I'm wondering, who are the prisoners? Who holds the lock and the key? Who has the power over life, over death? When will we finally be free? Not in my name. 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 Stray and we stumble in seeking the truth. Wonder why it's so hard to find. But an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth leaves the whole world hungry and blind. Watched all your holy wars, your jihads, your crusades. I have been used as inspiration, I've been used as an excuse for the murder and the misery you've made. I thought I made it clear in the Bible, in the Torah, and in the Koran. What is it in my teaching about loving your enemies that you people don't understand? Not in my name. Not in my name. Not in my name. Not in my name. No, no, not in my name. 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 Not in my name.
You've been listening to Music for the New Revolution. I'm Rodney Wittenberg.
I'm David Heitler-Clevens.
Music for the New Revolution is produced at Melody Vision Recording Studios in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Music for the New Revolution is written and produced by David Heitler-Clevens and Rodney Wittenberg.
And edited and co-produced by Ben Flax.
You can find us at musicforthenewrevolution.com or MFTNR. Like us on Facebook and follow our Spotify playlist.
And our podcasts can be found on SoundCloud and iTunes, and you can also be a patron, a supporter of our podcast on Patreon.
This is Music for the New Revolution.
Spend it all today and we will bill you tomorrow. 3-piece suits and bank accounts in Bahamas. Wall Street crime will never send it to the slammer. Tell all the children in the arms of the mamas. The F-15 is a homicide bomber. TV commercial for a popper pill culture. Drug companies circling like a vulture. Amaraki babies with the G.I. Joe father.